Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. This episode is essentially a follow-up to the previous episode dealing with Bella's last walk. And in that episode, a few of you were sort of saying, well, how do you know how a 4-year-old child would behave? It's a good question, and it's an important question to ask, how would Bella behave? And there is an answer, and the answer is in the discovery. The answer is things that her grandparents said about her, and we're going to go into that. The answer is something that Chris Watts shared with Nicole Kessinger about his children, and also in terms of their behavior towards him and his feelings about their behavior. And then also something that Shanann also said to a friend of hers regarding Chris Watts's, the dynamic between Chris Watts and the children. Obviously, one of the best ways that we can understand the behavior of the children, one of the best ways that we can intuit it, predict it, follow it, kind of get a sense of it, is by looking at all of those videos of the children and looking at how the children interact with their surroundings, with their parents, with the camera and all that kind of thing. And so we do have that. We do have quite a lot of videos that Shanann took, either directed at the children or with the children kind of in the background. And of course, one of the children that does feature quite often in these videos is Bella. We also saw Bella at the beach, and we saw how tentative she was at Myrtle Beach. And this is very close to the time of the incident. It was essentially 2 weeks before she lost her life. I think the best place to start with intuiting and interrogating and getting a sense of how the children were towards Chris Watts is actually from Shanann. And on the day that she actually left for Arizona, when she left the children in his care, this was the morning of August 10th, at 20 minutes past 6, this is in the phone data review, she said to him, "I told Bella I was leaving for work with Nikki and assured her that I was always coming home." Now, Bella wouldn't need that assurance if Bella wasn't already a little bit insecure, anxious, and kind of suffering from a little bit of separation anxiety. And separation anxiety is definitely something that you come across more than once in the archive. I referred to it previously, just when Watts went out for his date, he kind of had to sneak out because he was afraid that there would be kind of a lot of drama if his children saw him leaving, and so he actually had to slip out. And she also says, right at the end of that message, Shanann says, "They truly missed you." And I believe that she says that to him because he didn't get that feeling. He didn't get a sense that his children, in other words, when he saw his children in North Carolina after they hadn't seen him for 5 weeks, I don't think, I get the impression that he was disappointed that his children weren't happier to see him, that his children gravitated towards Shanann, and that kind of bothered him. Now you might say, well, that's certainly not enough to get that impression from. But then we go to another text from Shanann, and this was either sent to Addie Maloney or Christina Meacham. I'm not 100% who it is. If you know, please leave the answer in a comment. And certainly if you can source it in the discovery what page it is, that would also be good. But what Shanann sent was, "I was trying to wait until the kids went to bed to talk to him." So she's talking to a friend about Chris Watts's demeanor and his behavior, and she's not very happy with it. And she says, "And he was being impatient with the kids for no reason." And I flipped and I said, "You know, since you've been here, you haven't touched me. I kissed you at the airport and that's it. Since then, the kids are not coming to you because you have been on edge since you got here." Now, can you see how that as a kind of bears a relation, as a connection to what she then said subsequent to that, saying the kids truly missed you, meaning when you weren't in North Carolina, they missed you. And you kind of get the sense that Chris Watts wasn't convinced and he wasn't very reassured by what was going on. And we're going to get more reinforcement in that as we go further. But what I want to emphasize here is that he was being impatient with the kids for no reason, according to Shanann. And she was so upset about that she flipped out, that she was quite upset with him. And him being impatient with the kids, I don't think it was for no reason. I'm not saying it was for a good reason, but I think he was feeling kind of mixed up in different ways. His feelings towards Shanann had changed, but I think he was quite unsettled, quite troubled by the fact that his children didn't seem to care that much about him. And of course, he'd not been in their lives for 5 weeks. He hadn't FaceTimed with them. And so they had grown closer to their mother. And he, of course, had grown closer to somebody else. And so this was kind of a consequence of that. But you kind of get the sense that he was actually quite hurt by this. And so there was definitely kind of a sense of separation, coldness, a lack of warmth in a way between father and daughter. Can you see that? Then we go to Discovery page 576, and this is now coming from Nicole Kessinger, and she said, Chris also said Shanann would talk, say certain things in front of him and the children were starting to repeat it. And then just below that, by way of sort of explaining that, apparently Chris would ask Shanann for something and she would say something like, shut up, you don't know anything. And then his children would repeat that. And that made him very sad. And that was part of what made him, according to what he said to Kessinger, realize he needed to separate from her. But what this is also confirming is a sense that he was unhappy with his children, or they were unhappy with him, or both, or whatever it was, right? And all of what this is doing is it is giving us a better picture of the child psychology going on. And that is why I'm kind of saying, the idea that the children, I don't get the sense that the children would really listen to him, and I don't get the idea that he was very good around the children either. And so the idea that he would take the children somewhere because he felt sorry for them or because he loved them, I don't think that is true. Anyway, we go to the next thing, and this is from Shanann's mother, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It is from Discovery page 73, so quite early on in the Discovery. And if we zoom in, she says, Chris appeared to be quite cold towards Shanann and the children, right? She previously says that he was a good father, but for whatever reason, even when he was in North Carolina, it seemed as if his feelings towards his children were changing. And then the final reference comes from the children's grandfather, and he was talking about a different period. So going all the way back to June 21st to June 26th, and this is kind of around the period where they were going to San Diego, Chris Watts and his wife. And then Shanann's father came to babysit the children in Colorado, and then she flew back to North Carolina when they returned from San Diego with her father and the children. They all flew together. And anyway, it seems like he was referring to that time, June 21 to 26, where he says, I noticed Chris was acting different with the girls. He was yelling at them, raising his voice with them, and he said it made me look at him like, what are you doing? And then he also said when Shanann would FaceTime him, which she did every day while she was here on vacation, she'd ask him if he was going to pay attention to the girls. and he was kind of interested in something else. So that kind of shows you that, you know, you can't really blame the children for feeling the way that they did, because their own father was distracted. And so when he now returns to North Carolina in August and expects his children to suddenly kind of welcome him back with open arms, well, he'd been out of the picture for kind of a full month, and they had just grown closer to their mother. And anyway, Shanann's father says he was looking like he was looking at something else. When he came here for the last week of vacation, the girls would not go to him. They would go to mommy, and he didn't like that at all. And he says the look on his face was like he was mad at them. And this has got to be something that there had to be a residual effect on the children. They had to sense that something wasn't right, that daddy's not being very nice to mommy's not very happy, and they probably did get a sense that it was safe being with mommy, and something's up with dad, and I'm not gonna kind of hang around him. And you kind of, I certainly picked that up when they were at Myrtle Beach. There didn't seem to be a genuine sense of fun, togetherness, spontaneity, love, even joy between the whole Watts family at the beach. They were almost like four individuals. Shanann's got the camera. Chris Watts is standing there, probably doesn't want to be filmed, is thinking about Nicole Kessinger, kind of daydreaming about her, and kind of probably because he's on the sand on the beach thinking about the great sand dunes. And of course he's just tried to poison Shanann, and so he's in this weird fuzz in his mind. And his children are like, well, okay, I'm going to hang out with mom. She's here. This guy's out of it, kind of thing. But what is quite interesting from the grandfather is that he says, I went to the beach with them for the first 3 days, and Celeste would say, that's my truck, talking about her grandfather's truck, Papa's truck. And then Watts would say, well, I've got a truck too. And Cece would say, well, but that's my truck, talking about her grandfather's. And that was kind of showing that her allegiance had sort of shifted, that she was gravitating, she was becoming closer to, in a way, her grandfather, not her father anymore. And there's also just a sort of a postscript towards the end where he says he was acting kind of distant because the girls wanted me more than him, but it looked like he didn't care, his mind was somewhere else. So there was this perception that the girls would sort of realize, wow, this guy's out of it, and whatever was going on with him, he was pulling away. He was pulling away from Shanann, and I think that the time that he was paying attention to Kessinger, the girls picked that up, and they became closer to their mother. And the point of all of this is to say, in a scenario of, it's now Monday morning, if Chris didn't want to be with his kids, why the hell would he take them to work alive? I'm just saying, you answer that question. And you might say, well, you can't explain it, but I think you can. I think there's a precedent for it. And the precedent is that he'd already kind of decided and felt that the children weren't on his side anymore, kind of thing. And he no longer wanted them part of the equation. That's why he called the school. That is also kind of part of why he wanted to get a divorce. He just was pulling out of the family. And when his wife spoke about, are you just staying for the children? I don't think he was even staying for that. He just wanted out. And so the idea that he would go to the well site, and Bella, who's not getting along with him very well anyway, and Bella, he's kind of been yelling at them. And do you really think that they are going to be comfortable, either the one child or both, in that situation? They're already not comfortable as it was, and now it's this situation, it's even less comfortable. And the figure that is supposed to soothe them, the figure that they are kind of feel safe with, is kind of there but not there. She's absent. She's apparently with them there but not moving. Are you telling me that is not going to cause them distress, concern? It's not concern or distress in 5 seconds, like you're sitting there and are you concerned? It is concern and distress over 1 minute, then 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 20 minutes, then half an hour, then 45 minutes of somebody not moving, somebody not doing anything, somebody not soothing you, somebody not talking to you, somebody not feeding you, somebody not clothing you, what all of those things. And that all I'm saying is all of that sounds to me very unlikely. And instead we kind of get this story that the children are inert. They say virtually nothing, they do virtually nothing. And you might say that makes perfect sense to me, but I kind of give Bella and Cece a lot more credit for having an identity, for having a life force, for having a will of their own, for having a will to live, for having a personality. And we know what that was. We know what the dynamic was like between father and daughter, based on what is in the discovery. Does that make sense? I'm not going to take it further than that. For those of you interested, my book, Silver Fox Post-Truth, has just been published on Amazon. It's already the #1 new release, and it is, I think, number 16 in the hoaxes and deceptions category on Amazon. I will put a link in the description if you're interested, so go and check it out. I'm getting very positive reviews for those listening to the audiobook on Patreon, and that is on the $10 tier on Patreon. So if you're interested, that's another option. Thank you for listening. Wherever you are in the world, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys next time.